Joining us now, former senior White House advisor, my favorite White House advisor, and the founder of America First Legal, Mr. Stephen Miller. Now, Steve, we talked about this. Where's Waldo? Where's Kelly? So I thought, in honor of your coming on today, we did some research, the whole team. We looked everywhere, could not find, seriously. I think the last time you were on, we talked about this. You said maybe some local regional newspaper. Nothing. We couldn't find it. Maybe it's out there. So I ask you, what does this guy think he's doing? And what does he think his political future is?
It is the greatest mystery in American politics. I'm glad that your staff validated my experience. I searched Twitter, I searched Facebook, I searched his website, I searched the local Arizona papers. There's no trace that Mark Kelly has even been a senator. I mean, it is astonishing. This is the biggest, most transformative social policy change that touches every aspect of American life, and he hasn't uttered a single concrete thought about it. And the only thing that's more shocking than that, Larry, is that he shares the state with one of the people who's been most outspoken about it. So you have a situation where you have one Arizona senator who's not in cycle, who's not up for re-election, who frankly didn't really campaign as a moderate, who's talking about it extensively. Then you have Mark Kelly, the guy who said, I'll be an independent senator, I'll be John McCain-like, I'll have my own thoughts, my own positions, I'll buck my party. And he hasn't uttered a coherent, digestible, discernible thought about this thing since taking office. And you really wonder, does Arizona even have two senators at this point in time?
That's the thing, yes. I don't think this is a winning strategy for him. Now, he may vote for the bill. He may be hiding his own progressive socialist tendencies, okay? I mean, he wants to nationalize Medicare and so forth, and nationalize the healthcare system, but he has not said one word. Kirsten has been pretty brave, I think you would agree. I mean, Kirsten and Manchin have done a good job up to now. We don't know how this story is going to end, but where's Waldo in Arizona? I don't know, maybe they'll find him.
Senator Waldo, where is he? Arizona media, can you find him?
That's it. We're going to rechristen this, Senator Waldo of Arizona. I like that very much. Now, Steve Miller, there's some other things for you and me to talk about today. Speaking of this monstrosity of a bill, what I've gathered is there's still $7 billion in this bill that's going to help Afghan refugees. We're not even sure who the Afghan refugees are, flying to airports in the dead of night. We don't know. They haven't been vetted and so forth. There's $7 billion. And, Steve, on top of that, I'm told, research, $1.6 billion for unaccompanied minors in the, from the southern border, still in the bill. I don't know if the $450,000 per minor is in the bill, but maybe you have some thoughts on that. Maybe you have some new information.
Yeah, so, well, actually, the $7 billion and the $1.6 billion that you mentioned are actually in the government funding resolution that passed just last night.
Oh.
And so this is really quite breathtaking, is that, you remember when we were in the White House, they were always saying, it takes 60 votes to do everything in the Senate, 60 votes, 60 votes. So you can never get the policies you want in anything. And now here you have a situation where they passed a government funding bill with well over 60 votes out of the Senate that includes several of Biden's core immigration priorities, and yet nothing to secure our border, nothing to screen and vet refugees, nothing to improve our national security. It really is, I think, astonishing that a president who's polling in the mid-30s is able to get a 50-50 split Senate to pass his immigration priorities into law.
Steve Miller, it's a question here. I mean, we followed the Afghan story very carefully, but do we know who these Afghan refugees actually are? I mean, I remember the stories, 50,000 were coming here, 60,000 were coming here, but they weren't really the people we thought were coming here.
Correct.
All right.
And that's since been documented. No one even disputes it anymore, Larry. You may remember back when you and I were first talking about this, There was some pushback in some corners. Nobody disputes your statement anymore. Nobody challenges the fact that they brought in a group of completely random people, some of whom have no records at all. In other words, if you run their fingerprints, nothing comes up. If you run their names, nothing comes up. If you try to figure out where they come from or what their life story is, you can't even figure it out. Truly random people here in the country, and we have no idea who they are. Just none.
Or where they're going. $7 billion.
Or where they're going.
$7 billion is a lot of money, even in these
And
times.
that's to continue this through next year. In other words, to continue the same process, no vetting, no screening, no requirements for another year.
Now, I got another one for you. We're going to pivot to yet another story. Still staying around the southern border, Steve Miller. Biden and his team are going to resurrect some form of President Trump's remain in Mexico. Isn't that interesting? Remain in Mexico. He's had a catastrophic immigration problem. Catch and release, no wall, forget about the remain. Actually, the socialist president of Mexico is to the right of Mr. Biden on immigration and walls.
And probably many other things, too, for that matter.
And border. I know, it's Obregon turns out to be the conservative in North America. We could throw Trudeau in there, too. Obregon would still be the conservative in North America.
It's accurate. It's not even hyperbole.
Okay, so this is an interesting turn of events, and I just want to put on the table for us. You know, President Trump, outspoken, he's made the point, we've all made the point, President Trump just made the point that Joe Biden would have been much better off in his presidency if he had done nothing. Nada, nothing, because everything he's done has been bad, all the way from the catastrophe at the southern border, to the catastrophe in Afghanistan, to the catastrophe of inflation and taxing and overspending and oil prices and all those things we've been discussing. President Trump said he should have stayed at the beach. I said he should have stayed in his basement in Delaware. Whatever. He would have been better off doing nothing.
I mean, it's completely true. And no one's even rebutted it. No one's even made the point, oh, no, that's not right, Larry. You take every single issue, inflation, energy, supply chain, employment, southern border, Afghanistan. You take every single issue, and Joe Biden created a crisis out of whole cloth where there was no crisis solely because he reversed President Trump's policies. Now, to your point about remain in Mexico, this was one of the signature achievements of the Trump administration, along with many other actions President Trump took to fully seal and secure the southern border. But I have some bad news for you, and I wish what I was about to say wasn't true. But I have very good sources all around DHS, and you are going to see MPP, or Remain in Mexico, in name only. They're not going to use it on nearly enough people, in nearly enough places, across nearly enough groups for it to have any measurable impact whatsoever. What you are going to see is going to be a head fake, is going to be cosmetic.
So they really haven't learned. The bottom line, and they're stubborn, and they are for open borders, and they don't care about the national security related issues or the economic issues, because there are all kinds of job issues down there, particularly at the border, but then it circulates throughout the rest of the country.
You know, they're going to lose, Larry, they're going to lose some of their Democrat members in border communities because the Hispanic population there are outraged by the uncontrolled influx of illegal migrants into their communities for healthcare reasons, economic reasons, public safety reasons, you name it.
Well, I'm terribly sorry if they lose some of those border Democrats. It'd be a terrible thing. Steve Miller, that was a joke. Let me go back. I got one. I thought I had you for a minute there. I was a Democrat, but that was 45 years ago. All right. Last one is a chap named Ray Dalio, who was the longtime chairman of Bridgewater Associates, which is a gigantic, I don't know, multi-trillion-dollar hedge fund investment firm. And Dalio's a smart guy, but he's an eccentric. He says a lot of things he wishes he hadn't said. One of the things he just said on an appearance at another network, he's investing heavily in China. He's advising his clients to invest in China. And then somebody asked him, well, what about the human rights abuses in China? And he said the following, Steve, quote, I look at the United States and I say, well, what's going on in the United States I shouldn't invest in the United States because of our own human rights issues or other things? In other words, he's saying, I look at this United States, I'm not supposed to invest here because we have our same human rights. In other words, the moral equivalent argument, we're just as bad as China. They're a totalitarian, state-run country. There's no human rights, no freedom. Uyghurs, they broke Hong Kong. They may break Taiwan as far as they are our adversary or our enemy. And Mr. Dalio wants to make them a moral equivalent. And as you know also, last point before I get you, we keep investing in China. We're investing in their defense, in their military, in their cyber hacking, and all the rest of it. We're just like helping them. And I don't know why we should help them.
No. And the shamelessness with which people in corporate America are bowing down to Beijing is just repugnant. Larry, you lived through the Cold War. Some even say you were around for the War of 1812. But it's unthinkable that American corporations would give aid and comfort to our adversaries in this way. Could you imagine the leaders of major hedge funds, major banks in America, for example, bowing down to Moscow during the heart of the Cold War, making excuses for communist oppression, communist murder, communist human rights abuses? Something is fundamentally broken today in corporate America that they can take a clear moral stand against, say, Republicans, against election integrity, but they can't take a clear moral stand against human rights atrocities in China? That's a serious problem.
Yeah, and my friend, and Jamie Dimon is a great banker, and he's a friend of mine, and he made a comment, an offhand comment that was great. At some conference, he said, you know what, J.P. Morgan is going to outlive communist China, which I thought was really cool. And then a day later, he had to walk the whole thing back. And I don't know why he walked the whole thing back, because I'll bet Jamie Dimon believes that his bank will outlive the entire communist country. That's the kind of stuff, you're right, the woke stuff creeping in these borders. Ray Dalio should apologize for what he said. He ought
History
to be a
will
patriot.
not look kindly. These quotes will not be judged favorably by history.
Yeah, this is the old useful idiot story. The communists love this stuff. Last one, producers are screaming at me, Steve, but it's too much fun to talk to you. This great Chinese lady tennis player, Peng, okay, so she was sexually assaulted by a former deputy premier of communist China. We don't know where she is. We don't know what she's doing. The Chinese refuse to have a transparent investigation of her charge, her allegation that she was sexually assaulted. The Women's Tennis Association, God bless them, have now pulled out of all Chinese tournaments. Cost them an arm and a leg, but they're going to do it anyway to defend Peng and her human rights and this sexual charge. Now, I don't see anything from the Me Too gang defending her, and I guess my broader question is, maybe American athletes should back Peng by not going to the Winter Olympics. Maybe that's something that should be discussed. I don't know what you're thinking about that.
Well, number one, I applaud the Women's Tennis Association for taking the right moral stance. And the second and last point I'll make in the time that we have is I don't want to hear any social justice lectures from American athletes who are not going to stand up to China. You don't get to tell us how to vote, how to think, how to act as Americans if you're going to turn a blind eye to the atrocities in China.
Spot on, Steve Miller. Spot on. Thanks very much.
Thank you.